Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to take a look at the Transformers 2 Series Gamer Edition 02 Deluxe class of Barricade. Let's start off by taking a look at the packaging. So starting at the very front here, we have Transformers on the side, and open and displaying the figure in the packaging. We have 02, so this is the second figure of the 2 Series Gamer Edition subline. We have the game controller button with the arrows. We have Barricade and a Decepticon symbol done in white text. We have 2 Series and the Gamer Edition logo as well. And of course, at this top corner here, we do have the War for Cybertron video game logo. There's another one on the top of the box with that same game controller button. If we do turn to the side, we have a really cool close-up of Barricade with his head and chest looking very menacing and scary. We have 02 with that same game controller button, and Stu Series, and of course Deluxe class in several different languages. On the back here, he transforms in 15 steps. We have a proc shot of Barricade in his robot, his alt mode, and of course display with his included backdrop that I will show in this review at some point. It is the Dark Energon backdrop, and there is a brief description saying Barricade assists in the mission to locate an ancient power called Dark Energon. And as for the final side, another really cool action pose or artwork shot of Barricade with that same game controller button. And that is pretty much it for the packaging, so let's now get into the review. Now, before we take a look at the figure, I did want to quickly take a look at the included backdrop. This is the Dark Energon backdrop. So, of course, this is a really cool building sort of setting. Of course, this is obviously on the planet Cybertron. We do have the Transformers War for Cybertron video game logo. This is where you'll put the figure if you want to display it on there. And we do have 02. This is the second figure of the Gamer Edition subline. We do have Stu Series and that same game controller button. And then, of course, we have Gamer Edition Transformers and, again, that same game controller button. Overall, looking very, very cool. Of course, completely different from the previous Voyager Optimus Prime. And I'm assuming whenever I get Bumblebee, it will also be a different one as well. And you can pretty much get any figure, but I'm going to get Barricade because this was his backdrop and you can display on there. I think that overall looks pretty cool. That is pretty much it for the backdrop, so let's now get into the figure. Here we have Barricade in his robot mode. Let's start off by taking a look at the details, starting at the very top with that main head sculpt. Of course, some really nice yellow for the eyes. I do like how they're almost diamond shaped, very alien, very menacing. I do quite like that. There's some black for the main helmet section, some light gray for the main face, and of course, going to the shoulders, I actually do like all the spikes, the angles, the panels, overall looking very menacing and cool. And we actually do have one of the wheels there, of course, on each arm. Not a good fan of the exposed mushroom peg. Would have been nice if they painted those, of course, the same color as the tire to be not as noticeable, but a very minor complaint. Overall, really liking the shoulders, very big, bulky, and beefy, very menacing, like definitely works for this figure. And of course, you have this kind of really cool mixture of almost a gray and a purple for the, of course, shoulder and forearm, and there's some dark gray for the bicep and hand. Actually, speaking of the hand, it's a really interesting approach they went for this hand, because of course, typically for most Deluxes and Voyagers, actually the Gamer Edition Optimus Prime has that same sort of fist design that we are typically seeing. Of course, there's the port for the axe or weapon that we typically see in the Legacy Evolution line and others, but they actually did a bit of a different approach for this. It's actually kind of an open hand, which I actually kind of like. I wasn't expecting. So there was the thumb sculpted in. We have all 4 fingers kind of spread out individually. There was no articulation. I just really like the change and different approach they actually went for this figure. I really wasn't expecting that. As for the chest and this back section here, I actually really do like this. There's some really nice silver and spikes, and there's actually this kind of illuminated purple effect for these sections here and that back section as well. We do have a Decepticon symbol done in light purple with some silver in the background. So the legs. Definitely a major talking point with this figure. A lot of people do not like the legs, and that is understandable. There is actually quite a bit of kibble packed on the thighs or the top of the legs here. It doesn't look the greatest, and of course it does limit articulation quite a bit. It actually really is kind of hard to pose with all that in the way. I do have to say these are actually movable. Of course, they're tabbed into place for by the instructions, of course, how Hasbro wants you to position them, but they're actually movable, mostly due to transformation. So if you want to, of course, you can kind of move them in several different ways, kind of customize it if it looks better for you. I'm going to keep them there because that is by the book. I typically, of course, go by what Hasbro says, but that's really just my opinion. I do like all the spikes and kind of layers here, though. It actually looks really cool. And again, the mixture of the purple and gray is a bit interesting, but I think it works. And of course, we have some black, some kind of grayish gunmetal gray, silver. I have to say, probably one of my biggest complaints with this mode is the feet. I know a lot of people don't like the kibble. I just really don't like the feet because they're very unfinished, untouched. They're just kind of plain in comparison to the rest of the figure, because as you can see, of course, there's quite a bit of detail. There's the illuminated purple, there's some gunmetal gray level, the spikes and panels. It just overall looks really, really good, but the feet are just really boring. I don't know why. Of course, it's just really that kind of unfinished, boring dark gray. Would have been nice maybe if there was like some silver or gunmetal gray. You might think my complaint is a bit weird or odd. I just think it just looks a bit odd to me. I don't know. But of course, the side profile overall looking pretty cool. Not much kibble or anything sticking out, so overall pretty good there. And at the back, this actually looks really, really cool. So of course, gap-wise, everything's pretty well filled in. Again, nothing sticking out, but I like this entire section here. Really nice sculpt work. There's actually this entire kind of booster section. This does form the back of the entire, race car or tank alt mode. I'll show that a little bit later, of course, once I transform him. But this actually looks really, really nice back here. I was not expecting the nice sculpt work there. Unfortunately, it is a bit unfinished and unpainted. It would have been nice maybe if there was some more of that kind of illuminated purple or silver or gunmetal gray. I think that was a missed opportunity. I know, of course, there's budget. It's only a deluxe. I think if this figure was a Voyager, of course, bigger, I think they probably would have put more paint apps in this area. But again, it is just a deluxe. But again, the scope work, I'm very impressed. This looks absolutely awesome. Love these cool canisters, this huge booster section here. And of course, this slot will come into play a little bit later for weapon storage, which I'll show in just a sec. And that is pretty much it for details. So now for articulation, the head is on a ball joint, so it can look up and down and side to side. I'm not going to show it because most of the joints on this figure, for my copy anyway, is very, very tight. So I'm not going to really push anything. But of course, there is a ball joint at the shoulder, so it can move out and in and forward and back, again, very tight. There is bicep rotation, elbow bend. Of course, the hand is on a ball joint, again, very stiff. So there's rotation there. There is a fully uncompromised waist rotation, again, very stiff on my copy. And as I said before, of course, these little wheel sections, again, there is kibble, but they're actually movable, mostly due to transformation. So it is slightly customizable if you want to move them out of the way. Again, really just a matter of opinion. As for, of course, the top of the leg, there is some swivel. It can kick forward, back, out to the side. There is a knee bend to an okay degree. And another huge problem that people have with this figure is there is no ankle pivot. I do have to say I agree with people's complaints and problems. No ankle pivot does actually really suck, especially for trying to do poses, because it just limits it so much. I actually had quite a bit of trouble and pain trying to do poses and pictures for this figure, because the ankle pivot really helps. It really helps more than you think. I think most people realize how much it helps when you don't have it on a figure. I do have to say, for Deluxe in 2023, I really think it should be a given that a Deluxe has an ankle pivot. A core class or a smaller figure, that's understandable that it doesn't have it. But a figure this size, I really think it should have been a given. I do know the feet do flip up for transformation, but I really don't think anything was stopping them, because there is many figures where, of course, the feet transforms, moves or folds up, but it still does have an ankle pivot. So that's a bit of a letdown there. I really think that should have been a part of this figure, but that's pretty much it for articulation. So now for his one accessory, that's another thing that does bother me as well. I think he should have come with another accessory. I know it's been a very long time since I played the War for Cybertron video game, so I really don't know if he had any other weapons. I think they probably could have created a new one if this is his only weapon in the game. I really don't remember. Of course, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. He might have had 2 different weapons or like a sword or something. I really don't know. It's been so long since I played that game. But if he only had one weapon in the game, maybe they could have created a new one, like an axe or a sword or like a mace or something, because as it is, he only comes with one and he's a deluxe. And I have to say, in comparison to Bumblebee, which is also deluxe, I'm pretty sure Bumblebee comes with 3 or maybe 4 accessories. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't have that figure just yet. It is coming soon. And again, to the Voyager class Optimus Prime, which I did recently review, he comes with quite a few accessories as well. I know he has a Voyager, so the budget, of course, is increased. There's more money spent on that figure, but I think you understand what I mean. Of course, 2 other figures have much more accessories. This one only has 1, so a bit of a letdown in that aspect. I do like the one accessory. It's very cool. I enjoy it. It looks really cool with this figure, but I just feel like, next to the other figures, I just feel like he's missing something. I think they could have added something to this figure to make it a little bit better. But of course, how you can actually store this weapon, there's actually 2 different ways. Of course, the one way is you can remove the forearm and attach it on there, which I'll show in just a sec. But the second way, I actually did not know about when I purchased this figure. Before I even got it, I was not aware this was actually possible. So you can actually get this tab here, and there is a slot at the kind of thruster booster section that can tab into place, and there is the other weapon storage, which I did not even know, and I'm actually very pleasantly surprised. What's super cool is even from the front view here, it's barely noticeable that it's actually back there, which I quite like. I think that's a really cool feature. But of course, the main way is you can tab this and you can remove the forearm on this side and tab it into there, and of course kind of form the gun arm, which I think is a really cool feature. Kind of the same, format and way as the Optimus Prime if you saw that review. So the same peg and port system, just like that. And again, with the forearm, just the same peg and port system like that. You can just remove that. put it off to the side. I do have to say, like the Optimus Prime, you know, there was a feature where you could, of course, remove his form and you could store it on his back area. You could store there, and I thought that was okay. Unfortunately, with this figure, if you did like that, there is no feature that I know of. In the instructions, it did not show where you can just, you know, store this or attach it to the figure. I think you're just supposed to put off to the side, which, to be fair, I don't think I'm ever going to really use that feature with Optimus, because it is a bit silly to have his form hanging pretty much, you know, on his back. It just looks a bit silly, but of course not present on this one, which again, I don't really think it bothers me that much. But there we have the weapon storage. Only one accessory, but again, scope work wise, it actually looks very cool. I do like all the, you know, ammo clip, the really cool barrel. This is also plastic piece compatible, if you were wondering. Let's now get down to a few quick comparisons. So here he is actually with another Barricade figure. I thought I'd compare him to the Siege version. If you don't know, of course, this design is based off of the Siege Netflix series, and I have to say, of course, quite a few people did talk a lot of trash about the Siege Prowl mold. I personally actually thought it was a pretty good mold and figure, and I do enjoy this more Cybertronian futuristic kind of police car design. I thought I'd compare to this one because they're both very Cybertronian, you know, futuristic. I have to say, between the two, I do prefer this one. That is just my opinion, and they do look very cool side by side. And now for one more quick comparison, here he is with the other Gamer Edition figure I have. Again, I do not have Bumblebee just yet, but it is coming very soon. And once I do, of course, I'll make that comparison. But here he is with Optimus. And without a doubt, Optimus is the better figure. He has more accessories, better details. He's just much more enjoyable, of course, better articulation. He is a better figure in comparison to Barricade, but I still do recommend this figure. It's not as good, but I think it's still definitely worth a buy. That is just my opinion. But that is pretty much it for comparisons. So let's now get down to transformation. So what you're going to do is, of course, remove the accessory. You're just going to put that off to the side, and then, of course, you can attach the form back into place. And let's now get down to transformation. So what you're going to do is tab the foot in. So there is a slot there and a tab right there, just like that. And then what you can do is rotate the waist all the way around, just like that. And there we go. And then what you can do is get these panels here. These can just flip up like that into place. And then what you can do is rotate this wheel down. Then you're going to rotate this up. So then, of course, it's in the correct orientation. Same thing on the other side. So just rotate this around. And in this place, as you can see, there is a tab there and a slot on the inside that's just going to tap into place just like that. Tap that into place. And then just tap everything together like that. And then, of course, we're actually going to go to the arms now. You're actually going to open up this panel like that. Can be a bit tricky. And then you're going to rotate the hand at that ball joints and then pop the hand inside just like that, and then close it up like that. And there we go. Then you can do the same thing on the other side. So just open up this panel, rotate the hand around, and just tuck this inside and close that up. Can be a bit difficult to get all the way flat sometimes. Can get a bit stuck. There we go. Close that up. Then you can rotate at the bicep joint like that. Rotate at the bicep joint. Sometimes, of course, the form will pop off on this side. Just pop it back on, and there we go. And then what you can do is actually use this joint. Actually will push it down, and there is a tab on the inside, and there is a tab right there. And of course, there is a slot, and there is, of course, a slot right there. So that will just all tab into place like that. Just got to make sure everything aligns up. Can be a bit tricky at times. Just make sure everything lines up just like that. And there we go. And then do the same thing on the other side like that. So just go from the bottom, line everything up. And there we have the arms all done. Then what you're going to do is actually disconnect this entire section from the back. So there's this huge tab there and there's this huge slot. You're going to open this section up. So there is a tab inside and there is a slot right there. That's just going to tab into place. And this entire section will just kind of go over the head. There is 2 tabs here and there are slots pretty much on the inside of the arms that I just did. And that will tab into place just like that. So make sure everything is nice and secure. Can be a bit difficult to align everything. There we go. And there we have Barricade in his pretty much, Cybertronian sort of sports car mode. Let's take a look at the details. Here we have Barricade in a Cybertronian sports car mode. Let's start off by taking a look at the details. Starting at the very front here, we have actually this entire grille section done in almost a silver or gunmetal gray with these really cool spikes looking very menacing and cool. We have the headlights done in this kind of illuminated purple. We have a very classic Decepticon symbol done in purple as well with some black at this outer section here and some really kind of almost grayish purple mixture for these side sections. I do like all the angles and spikes looking very futuristic and of course very Cybertronian. I do quite like it in almost this kind of silverish purple for the entire cockpit or windscreen section of the sports car. And if you're wondering about this port here, this will actually be filled in and covered with the weapon, which I'll show in just a sec. Actually has some really nice yellow details back here and some more of that illuminated purple effect. I do like all these spikes actually sticking out. Actually looks very, very cool. Would have been nice maybe if there was some pegs to actually attach some blasto pieces, but unfortunately there is not any. And if we do look at the back, we actually have that really cool thruster, entire engine section. Again, really amazing scope work, but it would have been nice maybe if there was some more paint-ups, because as it is a bit plain and bare. But again, I cannot deny this looks very well sculpted. I love the canisters, this huge thruster section looking very, very menacing. And of course, as for weapon storage, you can start with that huge port there, and of course there's this huge peg right there. So I would advise some caution, because this huge peg here is very thick, and of course I would not advise to fully tab this in, because I did it one time when I first got this figure, and it was pretty hard to get out. I was pretty worried about snapping the peg off or causing any paint chips, so I'd advise to just halfway put in, because you do not want that to get stuck in there. That is just my opinion, of course. Do what you want. I'm just kind of giving a little bit of a warning, but that is pretty much it for details and the weapon storage. Of course, if you want to, there is kind of an alternate way. It's actually not in the instructions, but you can use that same tab and slot from earlier that I showed in the robot mode. Technically, they don't show to use that, of course, in this mode, but if you want to, it is an option. I prefer this look. I think this looks a lot cooler. Almost resembles sort of like a sports car tank mixture. Very futuristic and cool in my opinion. But let's now get down to a few alt mode comparisons. Here he is with that Barricade from Siege in that really cool futuristic police car mode. I do love these huge machine guns at the front. I think that looks really cool. And I think they look pretty cool side by side. And again, I have to say I still like this Barricade design more. That is just my opinion. And now for one other comparison. Here he is with the Gamer Edition Voyager class Optimus Prime. And again, actually, I have to say, they're kind of keeping with that sort of tank style. As you can see, they both have that huge cannon barrel in the back, but overall looking very cool side by side. Of course, the Optimus is much bigger than the other, but I have to say the Barricade is actually much bigger than I expected just for a Deluxe. But of course, in comparison to Optimus, he is much smaller. But just as a Deluxe, he is a pretty hefty, pretty big car, and I was not expecting that. And that is pretty much it for alt mode comparisons. Let's now get down to reverse transformation. I'm actually going to have to zoom out quite a bit as much as I can. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to remove the weapon, just put that off to the side. What you're going to do is actually untab this entire section here. So just untab this entire section from the arms. Again, unfortunately, sometimes the arm does come unpegged, so just pop that back on. And we'll get the arms in just a sec. So just peg that back into place. There we go. You're going to, of course, move this entire section off of the head. Then you're going to disconnect this piece right here. So there is a tab there and a slot right there. And then you can fold this down. And there is a port there and a peg right there. And I'll tab that into place in just a sec. You're actually going to move the shoulder joint all the way back into place from earlier. You're going to untab the other arm. Just like that, as I showed before, there is a slot right there, there's a tab right there, another slot, and another tab. So just move the entire shoulder joint up. You can then rotate at the bicep joints, just like that. Same thing on the other side. Then you can actually open up the hands like that, or open up this entire forearm piece, flip the hand out like that. Can be a bit difficult. Then you can rotate at that ball joint, like that, and close everything up, and then just do the exact same thing on the other side. So just open this up, flip the entire hand out, rotate at the ball joints, and just push that down and close it up. There we have the arms all done. And then we can actually go back to this section here. I did this, of course, a little bit later because the arms were a bit in the way. And then you can just tab this into place. And this connection here is actually very secure. I actually suggest pushing right from the center because it can be a bit difficult to tab into place. Just to make sure that's nice and secure. It might take a few tries. It actually did for me. Then what you're going to do is actually move these panels down just like that. You can then rotate all the way around at that waist section. Disconnect the legs like that. You can then flip the feet down like that. And there we go. And as for these little wheel pieces here, I do have to say, if you wanted to, you could actually leave them in place like this, but according to the transformation, unfortunately, you do have to move them up at the thighs. And again, this hand just does not want to stay on. Apologies about that. Let's get back to these wheels. So you're going to disconnect that. You're going to rotate this entire section up and around like that. And there is a tab on this piece and a slot on the side of the leg. Same thing on the other side, so just rotate this up and back, and again tab that into the side of the leg, and there we have the reverse transmission. Let me just quickly kind of position them, and let's now get down to the final thoughts. So now for the final thoughts for the Transformers Studio Series Gamer Edition 02 Deluxe Class Barricade. I think overall this figure is pretty good. There is some problems here and there that I do have to say. So starting in the remote, I actually do quite like the accessory, very well sculpted, almost kind of like a rifle or machine gun. And of course it can do that same gimmick and the same format as the Voyager class Optimus Prime. So you can remove the form on one side and of course tab in the weapon to sort of recreate the same style from the video game. Of course we can pick up weapons pretty much across the entire level or across Cybertron and add it to your arsenal, or of course to the figure or character you're playing, which I actually really like this gimmick. I think it works super well. I do have to say for this figure though, I'm a bit let down about how many accessories this actually includes, because in comparison to the Deluxe Class Bumblebee, I do not have that figure yet, but if you do look on pretty much any website it's selling, I'm pretty sure it has at least 3, maybe even 4 accessories, and I have to say in comparison to this Deluxe Class figure, it's kind of sad because this figure only has 1 accessory. That being, it is a good accessory, very well sculpted, I will say that. I'm not going to take any away from that, of course, but I really think they really should have included more, because considering there was other problems, if the only problem with this figure was the, limited accessories, I would be fine. But there's many others, like the lack of articulation in the feet, the lack of detail in the feet, and there's some other problems. So I have to say, a bit let down in that aspect. So it would have been nice maybe if there was like a sword or a mace or something else, maybe another weapon, an effects part would have been nice. I do have to say there's some really nice details, like this back section here, really cool thruster section. Could have used some more paint-ups, but I do like the scope work. I actually really do like the detailing of the head sculpt, really cool creepy eyes with almost diamond shape, and I do like the yellow. I do have to say all the really cool spikes and angles and details on the shoulders, the forearms, the entire chest, the legs just look super cool. There is some cable on the side of the legs, I will admit, but I have to say I'm probably not really that bothered by that. I think my most complaint is probably the feet, because there's no ankle pivot, which really cuts pretty much all the articulation and the poses you can do kind of in half, because you might not think it now, but whenever you get a figure that has no ankle pivot, I think you really realize how much you kind of need it for displaying and posing the figure. I actually just realized that now. I think you really need it, especially with the Deluxe Class figure. I really think it should be kind of a common thing, or kind of a certain thing that really shouldn't be included automatically. So it's a bit disappointing in that aspect. With the cable, it is bad, but you can actually move this and kind of rotate it around, mostly due to transformations. You can kind of customize it if you want to, but of course, by the book, you're supposed to leave them that way, which looks okay. It doesn't look the greatest. But as for articulation, overall pretty good. As I mentioned before, the arms, the legs are pretty good. Head is very good as well. Can look up and down and side to side. Actually, on this figure, the joints are very tight, surprisingly. I'm happy, I'm glad, but unfortunately, as I mentioned, the foot does not have any ankle pivot, which is a bit unfortunate. I think that's really the only problem as of articulation wise. As for transformation, really not that hard or difficult. I'd say pretty average for a Deluxe Class figure. Nothing complex or hard. It can be a bit fiddly at times. As you saw in the transformation, sometimes the form can kind of pop off or fall out of place, which is nothing, bad or annoying. You can just pop it back on, so nothing bad there. Just a bit, of course, fiddly and difficult at times. As for the sports car mode, I actually do quite like it. It's actually very big and kind of almost like a boxy. I was not expecting how big and weighty it was. I was expecting it much smaller because, it's a Deluxe. I was very surprised. The Voyager class Optimus is a bigger truck, tank mode, but still, as for Deluxe, I was surprised, I will admit. But I do like all the details, really cool, futuristic, almost sports car, police car, tank style, very interesting. I do like the entire front grille section with the really cool spikes and the silver and the gunmetal gray. There's actually this really cool almost silverish purple mixture for the entire cockpit or windscreen section. You can actually store the entire machine gun or rifle on top, which I think is pretty cool. It does further add to that tank style that they were going for. And I, again, do really like that entire thruster booster section at the back of the car and the figure, but it just would have been nice maybe if there was some more paint apps, because as it is, it's just black, so a bit boring and bare in my opinion. Overall, it is a good figure. It does have a few problems in here. I do have to say, when this figure was first revealed, quite a few people had, some problems with it. They were like, why is there no ankle pivot? Yeah, that is a problem. Some people are really just mad about the design. There is some kibble. I will admit there is problems, but I still have to say, I think it is a figure worth getting. No, it's not as good as the Optimus. I don't think it's going to be as good as the Bumblebee whenever I get that. I don't have it yet. I don't think it's going to be as good as that, but I still do think it's a figure worth getting. I do hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know what you think of this figure in the comments section down below. I do hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.